We continue now at the top of Daf Zayin and Mesechet Sanhedrin. This is Sanhedrin Daf 87b. On the previous summit, the Gemara was showing, according to Rabbi Meir, how all this is mentioned in the Brisa. Rabbi Meir says Zakin Mamre is only liable if it's something that involves kares. So we're going through each example given in the Brisa on the top of the previous summit to show how it can involve kares. And so now the Gemara is identifying where can we find the halacha learned from a gzeira shava that involves kares. And the Gemara says, din bito me'anusa, so that could be, let's say, a person has relations with his daughter from a woman that he raped, so it's not his wife, but it's his daughter from this anusaso, from this woman that he raped. So that's something that's learned from a gzeira shava, and it involves kares. The Amar Rava, because Rava says, Amar le Rav Yitzchak bar Avudimi, that Rav Yitzchak bar Avudimi said to him, Asya heina, Asya zima, that halacha is learned out from a gzeira shava of heina, zima. Rashi explains, Rav Yitzchak bar Avudimi be'elohen hanisrafin parishas law. That's explained in Elohen hanisrafin, the statement of Rav Yitzchak bar Avudimi. Gabe bito me'anusaso. Again, it's his daughter from the woman that he raped. Demehai dina yalfinan. We learn it again from this gzeira shava. V'hu davar shezidono kares. That's something where if it's done on purpose, so then the punishment is going to be kares. And Tosas over here mentioned din bito me'anusaso bekulo mishkach pluksa. In all of the examples we're going to bring, there's a machlokus, and we're saying that, for example, let's say the Zakin Mamre would argue with the Sanhedrin in this machlokus. Bar mehai, with the exception of this one. Here it's not a machlokus, it's just a halacha. V'rotzalomer de'in Zakin Mamre mo de b'gzeira shavazu. The Gemara just means to say, let's say the Zakin Mamre would not admit to this gzeira shava. That would be an example of something that's a gzeira shava that involves kares. And the Gemara continues, the Bryce on the previous summit said, Bein dam ledam. What does the pasuk mean when it says Bein dam ledam? Bein dam nida, dam leda, dam ziva. That can refer to dam nida, dam leda, dam ziva. And so again, where in all of these cases can we find something that involves kares? And so the Gemara explains, dam nida, when it comes to the blood of nida, bipluksa akavia ben mahalalel v'rabbanon. We can find that by the machlokus between akavia ben mahalalel and the rabbanon d'tanan, because we learned in a Mishnah, dam hayoruk. Let's say you have blood that's the color green, so that's a machlokus. Akavia ben mahalalel metame, akavia ben mahalalel says it's tame, v'chachamim metarin, and the chachamim say it's tar, it's pure. And so that would be something, if a person is with a nida, then that involves kares. And dam leda, what about when it comes to the blood of after giving birth? But plugsa de Rav Levi, that could be, let's say, the Zakin Mamre is arguing with the Sanhedrin in the same machlokus that's between Rav and Levi. The Itmar, because it was stated, Rav says, Mayon echadhu, that it's all one flow. HaTorah timaso, v'HaTorah tiaraso. The Torah says tame, and then the Torah says tahar. We'll see Rashi in a moment. V'Levi Amar, and Levi says, Shnei mayon osem. It's actually two separate flows. Nistam hatame, first the one that's impure is closed up. Niftach hatar, and then the one that is pure that's opened up, and then nistam hatar, then the one that's pure is closed up, and niftach hatame, then the one that's impure is opened up. And Rashi explains, hayoruk, when again it comes to the dam that's green, akavia ben mahalal mitame, dam hayoruk, have dam hanida, meaning he says that's considered dam nida. And so, for example, v'mamar zakin mamre kakavia ben mahalal, let's say the zakin mamre says, like akavia ben mahalal, maisi lo l'chiv kares, that's going to bring her to a chiv kares. Shapa'amim sharoa dam hayoruk betchilas nidosa. Sometimes she's going to see this color in the beginning of when she's a nidul. Levasof beis yamim roa dam edom, and then let's say after 2 days later, it's going to be red. Uposakas, and then it's going to stop. V'himaschelas limnos shivas yamim merias dam yoruk. She's going to count her 7 days from when it was the dam yoruk, when it was green. Betoveles umishameshes imbala beis yamim benidosa. Then she's going to end up immersing, and she'll be with her husband for 2 days while she's a nida. Lefisha dam hayoruk toru, because the dam hayoruk was actually pure. Limnos merias dam edom. She should have started her count from the time that she saw the blood that was red. And then there was the machlokus between Rav and Levi in terms of mayon echad, who according to Rav it's all one flow, meaning dam haba b'shvuayim shal nekeva shutame. For example, the first 2 weeks after the woman gives birth to a girl, so those 2 weeks we say the blood is tame. V'dam haba la'achar shvuayim shutar, and then after the 2 weeks the blood that comes we say is pure. Mi mayon echad. So according to Rav it's all one flow. HaTorah temaso kol shvuayim, and the Torah is simply saying the first 2 weeks it's tame. V'HaTorah tiaraso la'achar shvuayim, and the Torah says after those 2 weeks, then the Torah says it's pure. V'chazra v'temaso la'achar shekal yinimei Torah, then it becomes tame again after those days of purity are done. V'Levi Amar beis mayonos heim nistam hatame, but Levi says it's actually different flows, meaning la'achar shvuayim, after the 2 weeks, v'niftach hatar, then there's a new flow that comes of pure. Ukeshanistam hatar, and then when that's closed up, sof yimei toar niftach hatame, at the end of the days of toar, so then the tame one opens up. And Rashi continues, V'amrinon b'Meseches Nida, and we say Meseches Nida, my beinayi, what's the practical difference between Rav and Levi? B'shofas mitoch shvuayim le'achar shvuayim. Let's say, for example, she flows from the 2 weeks to after the 2 weeks, so mitoch shmonim le'achar shmonim, or let's say from within the 80 days to after 80 days. L'Rav, according to Rav, afal pi shelo pasak ma'ayona b'soch shvuayim, even though there was no time where it stopped within the 2 weeks, v'yotze dam le'achar shvuayim mimena, and then the blood just continued to flow after 2 weeks, so tar, it's still going to be pure because it just goes by when it happened. Ula Levi, but according to Levi, tamei, in that case she'd be tamei, ad shetifsok shah, unless there's some stopping, it has to stop flowing for a little bit of time. The name of nistam hatame, then we could say that the tame has stopped. V'hashofas mitoch shmonim la'achar shmonim, and let's say she continues to flow from within 80 days to after 80 days. So l'Rav Tmei, according to Rav, it's going to be tame in that case. V'afa b'shazeu mayan atzmo shal yimei tahor, even though it's the same flow of the days that were tahor. Well, the Levi tahora, but according to Levi, we're going to say it's pure in that case. At sheyifsok mayan hatar, until we say that the flow that was tahor has stopped. V'yiftach mayan hatame, and the flow that's tame, that has to begin. V'iflog zaken mamre v'rabbanan bohan. Let's say the zaken mamre and the Sanhedrin would argue about this. Ka'asili de kares. Then it could come to kares. I rabbanan kirav v'hu kalevi. For example, if the rabbanan, the Sanhedrin, follow Rav, and the zaken mamre follows Levi, ika kares la'achar yimei toar. There is going to be kares after the days of toar, of the pure days. V'i rabbanan kalevi v'hu kirav. And if it's the reverse, that the Sanhedrin follows Levi and the zaken mamre follows Rav, ika kares b'tchilas yimei toar. Then there's going to be kares at the beginning of the Yimei Tohar, the Rav Lakula, V'Levi L'chumra, because there we say Rav is being lenient and Levi is being strict. And the Gemara continues at the two dots. We said above Dam Ziva that you can have a situation of Dam Ziva where there's a machlokus between the Zaken Mamre and the Sanhedrin that can involve kares. That can be, for example, Bepluksa, the Rabbi Eliezer, Rabbi Yoshua. That could be the same machlokus we find between Rabbi Eliezer and Rabbi Yoshua. The Tanan, because we learned in the Mishnah Meseches, Nida Kishta Shlosha Yom Besoch Achad Osar Yom. Let's say she has labor pains for 3 days during the 11 days. That's the 11 days of Ziva. Im Shavsa Me'es Le'es. Let's say she stops having those pains for a 24-hour period, v'yolda, and then she gives birth, harezu yoledis bezov. That would be a case where she gives birth, and it's considered like she gave birth in the Tumas Ziva. Divrei Rabbi Eliezer, that's the opinion of Rabbi Eliezer. Rabbi Yoshua, when Rabbi Yoshua says, laila v'yom, it's not shafsa me'es la'es, it's not that she stops having the labor pains for 24 hours, but it's a night and a day. Kelele Shabbos v'yomo, for example, like the night of Shabbos and the day of Shabbos. Sheshafsa min atzar, and what we're talking about is that she ceases to have labor pains, v'lo min hadam. We're not talking about ceasing from the blood, so that can be an example of a machlokus again that can involve kares. Rashi explains Kishta Gimel Yom B'Soch Achar Asar Yom Ksiv B'Parshas Zava. It talks about by a Zava B'Achar Asar Yom Shebein Nida L'Nida. That's the 11 days between when she's a Nida. And this was mentioned on the previous Amud. Shehem Hayam Hamevian Itli De Ziva. In those days, if she sees blood, we don't say she's a Nida, but we say she can become a Ziva. V'Isha Ki Yazov Zov Dama Yomim Rabim. It talks about the fact that she sees this flow of blood Yomim Rabim. Again, if it's 3 days consecutive, she becomes what's called a Zava Gedola. V'tanya b'perak benos kusim, and we learned in the Brayso Meseches Nida, Dema machmas atzma, Dama machmas atzma v'lo machmas vlad. It has to be blood that's coming, that's flowing from her, not because of the childbirth. Magid shadam hakishoy sheyotza kodem havlad machmas sar hakishoy. What this is teaching is let's say she has blood because of labor pain. Sometimes blood is going to come out because of the labor, because of the birth. Eino mevi de ziva. That would not make her a zava in such a situation. V'kol shekein dam shalachar havlad. Now, certainly any blood she sees after the childbirth, that is certainly not considered to be dam ziva. Avolim rasa gimel yamim ritzufin bohen mitoch kushi. But let's say, for example, she sees blood for 3 straight days because of labor pains. But then she no longer has any pain for an entire 24-hour period before the baby is born. She had no pain. And then she gave birth. Whether she gave birth from labor pains, or whether not, that's considered to be that she gave birth, but she does have the tumah of Zava. Because since there was no labor pains for that full 24-hour period after she had 3 days straight of seeing blood, so we can say that was not blood that came because of the child, because of the childbirth. And she becomes a Zava, limnos zayin nikiyim, she has to count 7 clean days, kedin Zava, just like a Zava. And if she doesn't count those 7 clean days, we're not going to say that it's pure blood that she sees. time, even after the 2 weeks go by. And then after the 80 days go by, she's going to need 2 karbanos, one because of the childbirth, and one because of the fact that she was a zava. And Rashi continues, then Rabbi Yoshua said it's not 24 hours, but rather it's Laila v'yom, it's a night and a day. Meaning, Aval me'es le'es, but let's say it would be 24 hours. Lo chashiv shufi, that would not be considered a break in labor pains. Im shafsa mishesh shos shel shlishi, ad sheish shos shel dalit. For example, let's say she rested from having labor pains from the 6th hour of the 3rd day to the 6th hour of the 4th day. Hoel v'havale mixas kushi b'yom hashufi, since there was some labor pains on that day when there was a break from the pain. Lo havi yoledis bezov, so then in that situation, it would not be considered yoledis bezov. For Rabbi Elazar l'chumra of Rabbi Yoshua l'kula. So in this situation, Rabbi Eliezer is actually being strict, and Rabbi Yoshua is being lenient. Rabbi Yoshua is saying that in this situation, it's not considered to be a yoledis bezov because it's not considered to be a break from the childbirth. V'hainu davar shezadona kares, and this is something that can involve kares if it's done on purpose. So that could be a machlokes, again, that can involve kares with regards to dam ziva. And the Gemara continues, we said in the Braisa, Bein din ledin, what does it mean when it says Bein din ledin in the Pasuk? It means Bein dinei mamanis, dinei nefashas, dinei makos. It could be things involving mamanis, things involving nefashas, capital cases, and things involving makos, things involving lashes. And again, we can find by all of these situations that involve kares. Dinei mamanis, for example, when it comes to monetary cases, Biplugsa de Shmuel, for Rabbi Avo, it could be with regards to the machlokas Shmuel and Rabbi Avo. The Amar Shmuel, because Shmuel says, Shnayim shadanu, dineihem din, let's say 2 judges, they judge a case that's considered to be a valid ruling. Ela shenikroin bezin chatzif. It's just called a bezin chatzif. It's called an insolent court, but it is considered to be a valid ruling. For Rabbi Avo says l'divrei hakol ein dinei din, that according to everybody, it is not considered to be a valid ruling. So you'd have a situation over here where, let's say, the court issues this ruling, a court of 2 judges issues a ruling, and we don't know if that ruling, the machlokas between the Zak and Mamre and the Sanhedrin, is whether that ruling is considered to be a valid ruling or not, and that can make a difference because now we don't know whether the money is legitimately his or not legitimately his. If he uses that money for kiddushin, for example, so then it's going to be a question whether that was a kiddushin or not a kiddushin, and in situations where you don't know whether there was a kiddushin or there's a machlokas whether there was a kiddushin, so that can involve situations of eshes ish, and that can be something that involves kares. And dinei nefashos, what about capital cases? Bepluksa de Rebbe v'Rabbanan. That could be, for example, the machlokas between Rebbe and the Rabbanan. The Tanya, as we learned in a Braisa, so Rebbe says, v'nasata nefesh tachas nefesh. It says a soul for a soul, and that's talking about a situation where somebody has intention to kill one person and kills another person. So mammon. So according to Rebbe, we're not talking about a real soul for a soul. We're talking about a payment of money. Ata omer mammon oeino ela nefesh. You're saying it means a monetary payment. Maybe it really means nefesh mamish. It really means that we take the person's soul. Nemar nesina lamala v'nemar nesina lamata. It says nesina above and it says nesina below. Malahalon mammon, just like over there. The context of that pasuk was v'chiyinatzu anoshim v'nogfu isha hara. 2 people are fighting and then they push a woman who's pregnant. V'yatzu yiladev lo ye'ason anoshi yonesh kasher yashas ala balho isha v'nasan beflilim. That's the nesina that it mentions lamala. And then it also says nesina lamata. Again, it said v'nasata nefesh tachas nefesh. So malahalon mammon, just like over there, we're talking about a monetary payment. The situation over there was where they cause a miscarriage because the 2 men are fighting and they push the woman who's pregnant. So afkan mammon, so too over here, we're talking over here about a monetary payment. And so here also you can have this machlokas, whether there's a monetary payment or not, whether this is really his money or not. If that money is used for kiddushin, it's going to be a question whether it's a kiddushin or not. It involves eshes ish. It can involve kares. And the Gemara continues, dinei makos, let's say the Zak and Mamre and the Sanhedrin, they argue about something involving malchus. How can that involve kares? Bepluksa Rabbi Shmuel v'Rabbanan. That can be, for example, the machlokas Rabbi Shmuel and the Rabbanan. The Tanan, because we learned in the Mishnah, makos begimel, when it comes to lashes, the court is a court of 3 judges. Mishum Rabbi Shmuel Amr, but in the name of Rabbi Shmuel, they say bechaf gimel, that it's actually 23 judges. And so here, let's say they give lashes. There's a machlokas whether that's legitimately lashes or not. Was 3 judges enough, or did you need 23? And that would be a situation of wounding one's friend if it's not legitimately malchus. So then it actually is a situation where they wounded the other person and they owe money and it involves money. Again, when it involves money, the question is whether the money really belongs to the person, whether the kiddushin that he might use that money for kiddushin. Is that a good kiddushin? Again, it involves eshes ish. It's something that can involve kares. And the Gemara continues, bein nega lenega. Then we said that the pasuk says bein nega lenega, bein nigei adam, nigei batim, nigei begadim. That can be tsaras. That can have to do with people. The tsaras on people's skin or hair. or it can be the tzaras of bottom, of houses, and it can also be the tzaras that's relevant to clothing. And so the Gemara now explains again in each case how this can involve kares. Nigei adam, let's say it's tzaras on a person, bepluksa the Rabbi Yoshua v'Rabbanan, for example, the machlokas Rabbi Yoshua and the Rabbanan. The Tanan, because we learned in a Mishnah in Baheres kodim l'seir halavan, let's say the Baheres comes before the white hair, tamei, then we say it's tamei. Im sar lavan kodim l'Baheres, if the white hair comes before the Baheres, tahar, then we say tahar. And suffix, let's say there's a doubt, so that's a machlokas. According to the Rabbanan, we say tamei, and according to Rabbi Yoshua says keya, it's darkened. My keya, what does it mean? It's darkened. Rava says keya tahar. What it means is that it's considered like it's darkened, and it's considered like it's tahar. It's considered like it is pure. And Rashi explains keya, it's considered darkened, meaning ki'ilu keya hanega, it's as if it darkened the hava misimone tahara. That's one of the signs of purity. Kishemishtana halovin lachar hezger. Let's say after the person is isolated, it changes its color. And the point over here is Rabbanan, that according to the Rabbanan, im nichnas lamikdash. Let's say in this state the person would enter the Beis HaMikdash, so he's tamei chayiv kares. He's going to be chayiv kares. Rabbi Yoshua, but according to Rabbi Yoshua, Patri is going to be exempt, so that's a situation that can involve kares. And the Gemara continues, Nigei batim, what about when it comes to tzaras that's on houses? Bepluksa the Rabbi Elazar, Rabbi Shimon, Rabbanan. That can be, for example, like the machlokas Rabbi Elazar, Rabbi Shimon, and the Rabbanan. The Tanan, as we learned in a Mishnah, Rabbi Eliezer, Rabbi Shimon, Omer, Rabbi Elazar, Rabbi Shimon says, Liolamin abayas tamei, ad sheira kishnei grisin al shtei avonim b'shtei kesolim b'keren zavis. The house is not tamei unless you see the size of 2 grisin on 2 stones, and it has to be on 2 walls that are in the corner. Archo, and the length of it is kishnei grisin, is 2 grisin, v'rachvo kegris, and the width is a gris. This is very, very specific measurements in terms of when the house is tamei. And the Gemara says, my time with Rabbi Elazar, Rabbi Shimon. And what's the reason of Rabbi Elazar, Rabbi Shimon? Because ksiv, it's written kir, uchsiv kiros, it's written kir and kiros. Ezo kir shu kiros. What is a wall that's considered like 2 walls? Haveyomer zekeren zavis. We can say that that's talking about the corner. And so again, here you have a situation of tumah, and walking into the Beis HaMikdash in this state could involve kares. As Rashi explains, v'heicha delese b'keren zavis. Let's say the tzaras is not in the keren zavis, not in the corner. V'nichnas ba'adam, and then the person enters v'achagach nichnas lamikdash, and then he enters the mikdash. He enters the house, then the Beis HaMikdash. L'Rabbanan chayiv kares. According to the Rabbanan, he's going to be chayiv kares. L'Rabbi Elazar, Rabbi Shimon pater. According to Rabbi Elazar, Rabbi Shimon, he will be exempt. And the Gemara continues, Nigei begadim. What about when it comes to tzaras on clothing? Where can we find an example that involves kares? Beplugsa the Rabbi Nosson ben Avtolmus Rabbanan. It's for example by the machlokas. The Mesoras Hashas says it should be Rabbi Nosson ben Avtolmus. And the machlokas between Rabbi Nosson ben Avtolmus and the Rabbanan, the Tanyas, we learned in a brayse. Rabbi Nosson ben Avtolmus Omer. Rabbi Nosson ben Avtolmus says, Minayin, from where do we know? And we will continue with this discussion in the next video on Daf Peiches Amud Aleph.